Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. Well, if you're a new listener, we are welcoming you to the show. We hope you are um, already steeped in some beautiful work out there, and we're here to help you and support you to get to your beautiful life. If you're a regular listener, thank you for being there to receive us, and we're so glad to be connected with you in this way. Hi, Laurel, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. Are you?
I cannot wait.
I know. This is such a huge possibility for a big paradigm shift, a big an aha moment or two in this, I think, chat that we're going to have today. So, okay, listeners, here we go. And the topic we're talking about today is the trap of roles and responsibilities. And hopefully, we can help you free yourself if you feel trapped in any roles and responsibilities, or hopefully, we can set you on the path of freedom today as we have our deep dive conversation into the topic. So, Laurel, where shall we begin? What's coming up for you?
Oh my gosh, this is such a big topic for me,
Yeah,
and
me too.
when I think about the roles and responsibilities that I take to be mine, I mean, some of them may have been assigned to me, but often, this is kind of interwoven with my maybe it's my self concept, right? Maybe
Mm.
it's who I've become because of my behavior, but not necessarily because of my desire, right?
Mm. Mm. Ooh, maybe we need to pull that out as a quote. Yeah, because I think that, what's coming up for me when I kind of travel backwards is the roles, right? And the responsibilities that I took on had a lot to do with maybe my capability or where I saw a need that I knew I could fulfill, but maybe had nothing to do with who I want to be and what my real desires and, participating in life might truly be. So, yeah, big place to begin for anyone who's beginning to
Yes,
take a look. Yeah.
yes. And even, in addition to a need that you could fill, right?
Mhm.
It could have been a void that, maybe a void in myself that I was trying to fill, right? My
Mm.
my role of being helpful or my responsibility. I mean, I am helpful. Um, you
Mhm.
know, was that because I felt the need to, I don't know, prove my worthiness or to gain approval or appreciation, right? So this is a big topic, and I don't even know where to begin.
I know, I know. I'll tell you one of the things that's coming up for me is um, we can talk about we can go to all kinds of places, and we probably might end up doing a part two on this one just because it is so vast where we could go. But one of the things that was coming up for me was I was having a conversation with my niece in our mastermind, and we were talking about being in the rescuer role, like being a person, right, that you can look around and see what needs to get done and where people are in trouble, and knowing that we have somehow knowing internally that we have the capacity to help them, and for whatever reason, we have this rescuer archetype that's alive and well in us. And so we go right into that role, right? And it begins to give us, right, a sense of self, like you said, a sense of self concept, a way of self definition, a way of feeling worthy and productive and valued by other people. And so, that's a great example, a concrete example, like for our listeners to look at what is a role, right? Like a rescuer, like that you're rescuing, always running in and rescuing people when they're in trouble, right? Or running in and solving their problems, giving them great advice. Um, how can you begin to look at, maybe just do a little exploration of how did that start in your life? Where did it come from? What do you get from it? How defined are you by that role? And how stuck are you in that space now in ways that maybe you feel trapped and you don't want to be, right? And only we can
Yes.
unlock ourselves. Yeah, yeah.
And even in addition to going back and, oftentimes we do go back and maybe journal, we might kind of think through things. But I'm going to also suggest that in playing it forward, in just living your everyday life, the I read recently, emotions are clues um, of of a need, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think, and this happened to me recently, you know, preparing for Thanksgiving, I had a lot of things that needed to happen in my house. We rearranged 2 rooms to make room for 20 some odd people, and I was away. But it is always my role, and I take it on as my responsibility to prepare the house for company. I wasn't there. And so my daughter and my husband took a day and were doing it. And I was a little bit bothered by it. It came up like, oh my gosh, how can they do it without me? What will they do? What if it's not how I would do it? And I take that
Yeah.
kind of reaction as a clue of, oh, maybe I'm taking my role and responsibility in this instance a little too serious,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yes, and that need for control of it, right, has come to a place that's maybe gone into the unhealthy territory, right, where the response to finding out about that sets off something in you, like you said, that emotion, right, that can give you a clue that there's a need there or something's going on there that's worthwhile to give attention to and to understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you were speaking, you mentioned the archetype type of the rescuer. And then in the same, in your remarks, you talked about problem solver. Well, I have always claimed to be a problem solver, as if it is a badge of honor. It is one of the things I feel it comes easy to me. It's a gift. I use it in my work. I used it in my corporate career. But when
Mhm.
I think about the problem solver as the rescuer, it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to be that, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so it's interesting to think about, you know, what are my roles and responsibilities, as you said, that I've taken on because I have the capacity, I have the skill, um, I have the desire. But where's the edge in
Yeah.
the light side and the dark side of that same characteristic?
Right, right, and where do you get excited by it and where do you get drained by it? And those are
Yes.
2 beautiful, again, if we're thinking of ways to start to dissect your roles and your responsibilities, to begin to, write down, a role that you're in or a responsibility that you've taken on, and what about it excites you, and what about it drains you? And then how can you begin to start to make some modifications there to help you feel like you're not losing your energy, because I know a lot of roles and responsibilities when we've done them for a long time can cross a line where they used to excite us, they used to nourish us or give us a sense of um, you know uh, capability, like I can do this well, or you're learning and growing in it, and then at some point you may have exhausted it, and it exhausts you then, and it doesn't bring you the same kind of excitement or interest that it used to. And that's kind of the crossroad, I guess we would say, as we talk
Yeah.
about crossroads so often, is okay, well, if you're feeling that way about it, and here's the feeling as a guide, right? What can you do to begin to make change? And sometimes that's the scary part of it or the hard part of it to navigate.
Yeah. Yes, and if you ever feel that there's no one else to pick it up, I can't let this responsibility go because no one else
Mm,
will do it, or no one else will do it the way I do it, right? Those are the
yeah,
warnings of maybe there's some work
yeah.
to be done on the ability to let go or your ability to receive, right? When I think about
Mhm.
taking on
Yes.
roles and responsibilities that become a burden, is it, do we still carry those because we're not open to receiving help from someone else
Right,
or
right.
permission to let that go? Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And sometimes we have to practice a little bit to do things differently. Like I think about, um, my need for a really tidy kitchen and having a point where I challenged myself to leave dirty dishes in the sink when I went to bed, just because I had to show myself that I could actually go to bed and go to sleep, even though there was a dirty dish in the sink. Okay. And so, but these are the actual practical ways that they play out in our lives, right? And we get attached to things, doing things a certain way. We think that they're supposed to be a certain way, or we like them that way. And so we're just not willing to let anyone else do them. One of the things I learned when I was doing women center work and kind of diving deep into, human interaction and communication was, one of our rules in the group is no advice giving. And one of the premises as we begin to explore like why we have that guideline and what that means, right, is when we are giving advice to other people, at some level, what we're saying is, you can't figure this out for yourself. And so that's a really disabling, disempowering posture to take, right? And so to be able to sit in a place where you say, wow, everybody's capable of doing stuff. They might not do it like we do it, but people can get stuff done when they want to get stuff done, right? So, how
Yes.
can we loosen up a little bit? How can we take ourselves out of the need to have it a certain exact way and explore how it might be if somebody else stepped in and took up a responsibility that we used to have or
Yes.
don't want anymore? And how can we begin to, enjoy what that might bring and work with it in a way where you can still get it the way you want it or have some aspect of it the way that you want it and enjoy the freedom of not having to do it all.
Yes.
Do
And
it
it's
all.
so important to remember that whatever role we assign to ourselves or we accept as our own, right? Even if we don't choose it, we accept it. Um, whatever role we play, we are either limiting or defining the role someone else plays in relationship with us,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so,
Yep.
how
Yep.
can we move into a place where our relationships are fluid, maybe fluid and dynamic, where we have shared roles and responsibilities? It often comes up in the household, right? Or even at work. You know, if when I was a member of a team and there were six of us who had the same position, just assigned to different geographic regions, you know, I quickly moved into a role of being there for others, when they were taking a vacation and needed coverage, or doing a lot of work before my own vacation so the person covering for me would have it easier. And oh, by the way, do it in a way that might be, similar to the way I would do it if I was there. And
Mhm.
so, I was creating kind of an experience for them that maybe wouldn't have been the role that they chose. So
Yeah.
I think
Right.
about that a lot.
Yeah. 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 And interestingly, um, I think that one of the feelings uh, that so there's those shadow and the light side almost of the feelings that can be indicators, right? And one of them on the, I guess we call it the light side, is feeling like you've got it covered. You know how to do this. You do this in a superior way. Maybe feeling a sense of superiority if we really go out to the edges of that, right? And so if you're feeling that, right, it's like how can you instead begin to mentor other people to come in and do it well too and find their way of doing things well, right? So the feeling would be, oh no, they can't do it like me, or I do it better, right? And that could be an indicator where you could begin to come in and do more of a mentoring role or teaching role or whatever, help other people with it, right? And then the dark side for me is like resentment, where I always have to do this. Nobody can do this. Nobody does this. And I always end up being the one to do it. And I have to do it because they don't do it right anyway, right? Like that resentful, anger, irritated feeling, right? And again, like let that be our guide that, wow, something in the sense of responsibility or role that you feel trapped in, right? In your story, in your mind, oh, nobody can do it like me. Why can't they do it? Whatever that story is, right? That you feel trapped by. You're the only one that can begin to change that story, right? To
Yes.
allow things to be different. Yeah.
Yes. And it's funny that on the light side, you talk about the feeling of superiority, and in myself, I put that on my dark side, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mm,
there's that line of, am
yeah.
I experiencing, am I sharing, am I teaching and guiding in with curiosity and open-heartedness, right?
Right.
And that is a
Right.
beautiful place to be. But if I'm teaching or guiding, in a way, it's because my way is the best way. To me, that is not open-hearted and curious. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I do. It's interesting to think maybe what's just coming from me is maybe this lightness of being, this light approach is in the middle of two sides of darkness, one that we perceive to be bad and one that we perceive to be good,
Yeah,
right?
right, right. Yes, yes. Well, and I think that one of the other things too is, and it depends on, of course, what we're talking about in the exact example, but like feeling like you're really capable of something is feeling like you become an authority in it, that you're an expert in it, right? And when anything is taken to its extreme, it becomes its opposite, which is, I think, where we were going with that,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So, like,
yes.
now I'm better than everybody. So all of a sudden, it does seem like a shadow side. It's like, ooh, that's dark. Versus, wait a minute, I have some real knowledge about all of this right here, and I can share my wisdom on how to do this,
Yes,
and
yes,
then maybe I can learn from you too if you take it on,
yes.
which
That's
is
exactly it.
oftentimes the thing that's left out.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And it's interesting to think about, like, the side of when we carry responsibilities so much that we then resent those responsibilities, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how can we share responsibilities so that they don't become a burden and we resent? Because resentment, we can resent the responsibility, but what really happens is we resent the people in the relationship. We resent ourselves for, maybe even accepting the responsibility or being burdened by the responsibility. And then we resent other people who we perceive to be somewhat responsible for why we have this obligation and responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Um, so, for our listeners, as you begin your exploration of, or your, continuing exploration of roles and responsibilities and where you are with them and how you feel about them, if you feel trapped by any roles and responsibilities, I think one of the ways to begin your journey of how you got from wherever you started to where you are now, right, is to go back to the beginning. Like, when did you take that role on? When did you take that responsibility on? How was it at the beginning? And if you can see that there was some point that you traveled through where it went from being interesting, exciting, personally satisfying to, I don't really like this anymore. I'm kind of worn out by it. It's tiring me out. Like, how did that happen? Right. And what part of you no longer engaged in it in a certain kind of way, and what do you want to be doing instead? And I think we don't really let ourselves go to that place. We kind of sometimes get frozen, and that's where we trap ourselves, right? I always feel like, one of the things I learned, in my shamanic work was feeling like your roles and your responsibilities are an avenue, a portal of self expression. And so when we're expressing ourselves and when we're learning and growing in any role or responsibility, it can feel exciting and fulfilling. When it doesn't feel like we're necessarily expressing ourselves in an interesting way or growing and learning it anymore, it can really feel worn out. And that's oftentimes when the resentment and the anger or fatigue, the drain starts happening. So then, the it becomes how can you express a new part of yourself, right? By changing that role or responsibility or casting it off, even. You might even have to cast it off completely. Who knows, right?
Yes, free yourself from that, right? And then the
Yeah,
other piece I
yeah.
think about is, fact check, right? Oftentimes we are in these roles or responsibilities because we feel like we have no choice. And so start to really look at the stories that you tell yourself about why you're in it, right? And really, I think it goes back to in the four agreements, don't make assumptions, right? Often we're in a certain role or responsibility because we believe either we're the only one to do it, or we don't have a choice, or no one else is capable of doing it, no one else has time to do it. And those are assumptions that we're making about the other people who could be resources for us to share that responsibility or rid ourselves of that responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think um, uh, as we kind of close out here today, it feels like we've kind of woven in here a lot of journaling potential
Yes.
exercises for doing some exploration. So if you haven't been, jotting things down along the way, go back and kind of zip through and make some notes because I really feel like for me, the ability to free myself from roles or to express new parts of myself by doing a role differently or you know shedding responsibilities that I don't want anymore, and allowing myself to take on new ones, right, and to really communicate to the people around me about that has really been a part of, I think one of the ways that it's kept my life really satisfying in the last years, because especially when you go through big stages of life, right, and you're making those big transitions. So I know for me, in my 60s, in my this part of my first half of my 60s has been me really coming in and reviewing my life and thinking about, you know I'm not the mother of young kids anymore, but I'm still a mom. How do I want to be a mom now? What part of me needs to be expressed now? What's the legacy I want to leave to my children, my grandchildren? Like all of these things, right? And so I'm still growing and changing because I'm allowing myself not to still feel like I have to do the same Thanksgiving dinner, do it all the same. Like I don't have to do it all the same that I did before. And I've freed myself from that, right? And I feel like each one of us can free ourselves if we really are willing to do some of the edgy work, and facing some of the potential conflict or having the hard conversations maybe. And oftentimes what I've found is the hard conversations don't even seem to be really that hard. It's just hard for me to get it started.
And what a great reminder that your role, you we all change over the course of our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so you could still have a particular role like that of mother, right? But because you've changed, how you show up in that role changes. And what a beautiful way to grow into, you know, another version of being a mother that suits you well in this stage of life you're in, right? And we've talked about in many of our episodes the communication, right? It's it's don't assume, but communicate well how you have changed and how you may show up differently in the role, but that doesn't mean you're you're ditching that role.
Yeah, yeah, or ditching your loved ones. Because oftentimes that's how I think that's what we're afraid of, right? Is that's what we don't want people to feel hurt by us and we don't want to hurt them. And we don't want them to be angry with us if they feel like we've changed or moved on in any kind of way.
Yes.
And so, yeah, the only way that we can kind of reassure people is by just moving through it and being loving and kind and and rising to the occasion in that way.
Yes.
We should probably do a podcast on that, Laurel, sometime. How do you
I
shift
thought that
from
was
being angry and resentful to loving and kind?
oh, yes, that
Ooh,
would be such a good conversation.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, we'll be back for more real soon. Let's wrap it up for today. Laurel, thank you for this juicy conversation on roles and responsibilities. I hope it helps our listeners feel less burdened or trapped in their lives and more free to explore themselves in new ways.
That's right. Thank you. I enjoy our conversation always.
Yeah, me too. All right. See you next time, Laurel. Bye for now,
Bye.
listeners.